This episode of the podcast is brought to you by LeafWell. Hello, listeners of Cannabinoid Connect. Have you ever thought about getting a medical cannabis card? The process can be intimidating and difficult to navigate, to say the least. That's why I've partnered with LeafWell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and in 32 other states in the US. LeafWell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. LeafWell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis use. LeafWell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I mentioned, I've partnered with LeafWell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. Again, that's leafwell.com. Use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical cannabis card. LeafWell only charges if you get approved. So what do you have to lose? Visit leafwell.com today. Use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis, risk-free. Chris LaPorte, what's going on, man?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.
I am actually in Texas.
Oh,
Yes, just outside of Texas, and it's pretty relevant that you asked that because my wife and I just moved. So we are no longer in Dallas, and yeah, we're in the suburbs, basically.
congratulations.
Thank you, sir. And where are you located? I'm guessing Las Vegas, of course, right?
Beautiful Las Vegas.
Beautiful Las Vegas. And Chris, I'm really, really excited to be talking to you today because I've done, some research, done my homework, and your background is pretty cool, man, and unique, and all wrapped up in this story of entrepreneurship is kind of how I look at it. Like,
Sure.
I want to kind of preface that. Of course, I want you to divulge and jump into it, but from my understanding, you were in medical sales at first. You said, I'm over this. I want to go for something I'm passionate with. And you basically married the idea of the nightclub, dance club scene with video gaming, right?
That was the birth of insert coins back in 2011. So yes, it was a great idea at the time, but not a great idea because the timing was a little off. But it was a hell of a journey. Really proud of what we did then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's entrepreneurship though, right? Like, of course, timing is everything, but when you've got a great idea, you're passionate about it, you go through with it. I think that is really inspiration for where you're at today. And don't let me speak for you, but with Reset Las Vegas. But I don't want to jump too ahead of myself. So let's talk a little bit about insert coins. Like, walk people through kind of the evolution of that company and what you experienced throughout with such a unique idea.
No, I appreciate you starting off with that because I really do feel like the experience that we're going to bring from that venture is going to really capitalize with what we want to do with cannabis social use lounges. But what it came down to was I'm a hardcore gamer growing up, right? I was the nerd in the 80s and the 90s. Today these kids are cool, right? They're making millions of dollars playing video games professionally. But back then, we were kind of like a little early in the stage of what I saw as the future of entertainment, which was combining video game culture into the traditional nightlife world. And the reality was I was going to nightclubs and, the multiple gaming bars. And in Las Vegas, gaming bars are just the places where you grab your Bacardi Coke and play some video poker, right? That was the gaming
Right.
bar. And it wasn't for me. Right? I just kept saying that I know that there's a group of people out there who'd rather sit in a bar and play, at that time, Xbox 360. So yeah, then we just, I gave up my life in
Which
medical device
which was
sales.
huge, right? I mean, let's pause real quick.
Please.
360. So what games were out then? I mean, was it Halo? Was that the Halo
It was
era?
there was a little bit of Halo, but there was more like the Street Fighter 4,
Okay.
Call of Duty, Modern Warfare.
There we
Like
go.
this,
There we
like that
go.
just started that, and
Yeah.
we set up the bar where you would sit at the bar and you can play against other people in the same room versus playing online with random strangers. And I think that social experiment really worked because what
Right.
we were seeing, number one, was, this gamer culture back then was kind of like the odd man out, but then they were secretly in the closet. Right? There are people who you would never think were gamers. And I used to always take pictures of the most beautiful people in the world all sitting together playing Mortal Kombat. Like, you don't tell your friends you do this. So
Right.
it was a really great science experiment. And, I got to really see that the Las Vegas, being the entertainment capital of the world per se, we really were embracing this gaming entertainment. This is 10 years ago. So it was a really
Right.
fun time.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. And it's a perfect setup. I mean, let me just say, as I'm not a gamer, but I enjoy gaming. I say not a gamer because I don't like compete and I'm not like serious. I don't have my chair and like
Right.
so I enjoy it for leisure and I get, what I mean, what that means when you say gamer. So I got a brother-in-law actually who's out there. But um it's cool that you brought those two things together. And now it seems like you're kind of keeping that concept going when it relates to cannabis with what VR and AR experiences combined with, cannabis consumption lounges. Is that right?
So yes and no. And let's to kind of really give the story, because I know the website, tells one thing, but I'm going to be here to kind of dive a little deeper into it. The way this all came together was when I closed the doors to my venue, I had a gentleman approach me and say, "Look, this place was really kick ass. What if we did this with cannabis?" And I was like, "That sounds awesome. Like, let's do it." Didn't even think twice. I'm like, that's the next project. Insert coins with weed.
Are you are
That
you a are you a consumer or were you just like
Yes, but I
okay.
was a casual consumer, right? I'm not the hardcore cannabis, user. I've only recently, found myself toying with things like volcanoes, where prior to that, I was more the blunt guy, and that's as far
Right.
as my experience went. I didn't really play with other paraphernalia because the blunt worked. But that said, in 2016, we legalized recreational cannabis. And the challenge that we had immediately after was that there was no place to smoke. And because of the success of Insert Coins, there were a lot of people, who were just like, dude, video games and weed, like match made in heaven, let's do it. Um, that was back in 2017 when the city of Las Vegas approved the cannabis consumption laws. So it took 2 years since I closed the doors. And then even with that law passing, we are now in 2022 and we're finally getting the opportunity to open up the doors. So over that time, there's a lot of concept kind of, thoughts and work with a lot of different people. I'm just like, all right, what's the next best thing? And while I do in my heart of hearts want to do video games and cannabis in the near future, I think that this concept that we're doing with the partnership with Thrive is an even cooler one because it's going to bring, a much larger segment of like this non-endemic, more people like me, just this like the casual kind of curious versus the hardcore cannabis crowd that, there'll be some elements of gaming in some way, shape, or form by way of events and whatnot. But this will not be insert coins with weed. I want to make that very clear. This is a different concept altogether. But that's what you do in entrepreneurship, right? You figure out what's going to work best for the audience that you have today in front of you versus what you want to do because you want to do it, because that might not be right for the timing, which I learned again 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, man. And I totally see where you're coming from. I'm glad you clarified that because think about Facebook, for example, right? They didn't probably plan, and we have all seen the movie, right? He didn't think I'm gonna have a marketplace on this platform, right? It started with connecting, it started with a wall and personalizing what you had on there and sharing certain information and then that messaging and posting aspect, but it's evolved and that's what products do, right? Especially as they get better and better. So I totally get your point, and it makes sense to cast that kind of wider, broad net because there are going to be so many consumers that are kind of curious, right? They're just entering the market. They don't know what these products do. So even events probably around education and product formulation education and how to consume and dosages. I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking, how this thing's going to play out?
This is going to be a really fun conversation because we're definitely going to vibe off each other pretty aggressively. And, with insert coins, I utilize that space as an educational format because my long-term play back then was how do we tie video games to gambling in Las Vegas? Because I just kind of saw that there was this correlation there. And we tried
Uh-huh.
all these different things, and some things worked, some things didn't. But what we got to really create in this, it was a bar, nightclub, lounge, call it what you will. But we were doing so many things with the local community that we just developed this really dope, like regular crowd
Hmm.
that then became our ambassadors to like the tourism market. And
Perfect.
we want to do the same.
Authentic followers.
Authenticity, bro. Like that's just the thing.
Yeah.
I earlier said that I kind of I'm a casual consumer, and I want to make that very clear. I am right. I mean, I'm not the person who's going to sit there and tell you about every single terpene profile, this, that, and the third, because I'm just not as educated as some legacy operators are. But one thing that we did do very well was we built community here in Las Vegas. And what we really want to do is just take this opportunity to create a venue that will basically feel inclusive. And that's what we did at Insert Coins that was so exciting. People who maybe not a video game person would walk by the space and say, what is this? I want to check this out. And just, hey, welcome, open arms, welcome to our world. And I
Right.
can name drop all the very famous people who walked in that would never have walked in. But there was just something about the reputation that we developed, and that we're here to teach you what video gaming was back then. And now we are here to teach you a way to safely consume, but more importantly, enjoy cannabis socially. And I think that's something
Nice.
that we keep missing the point of. And it even says social use lounge, is that cannabis is a social product, and that, there's still a stigma that's attached to cannabis to these, some people outside of our world, that I'm really looking forward to educating and showcasing just all the different ways they can enjoy it, and then do it around new people and make new friends.
You know what? I love that. And here's why. It just struck me right now how you said cannabis should be enjoyed socially. And of course, right? That makes so much sense, but sometimes like even I forget that living in Texas where it's so illegal, right? Like I'm running to the corner, Chris. I'm in my garage. You know what I mean? I'm in the shed or whatever. It's like not so it sucks in that way because really that's what the plant, in my opinion, is intended for. The flower is, I mean, it's communal. You're passing a joint or a
Correct.
blunt or whatever the apparatus is. And so I love that. And I'm fascinated with the whole concept of the consumption lounges. So let's just kind of recap. So it's
Sure.
taken you since 2016 to be at the position where you are now, where your doors are open. And I think that's important to call out because there's a lot of people, I think, in this, not necessarily in the industry, like operators and stuff, but maybe on the outsides who are investors or what have you, anybody who just wants this to move forward. And we're still waiting on federal legalization. And then once that happens, think about the process of like making it actually implemented, right? And like, I mean, it's going to take time in Las Vegas. I mean, just that example, like you said, it took, what is it, 6 years?
Six
So
years.
yeah,
And I always want to make it very clear, we live in this microwavable society, right? Everything is instantaneously success, and far from it. And the thing that's so fast about cannabis is it's like gaming, and that like everyone does it, but not everyone necessarily talks about it. And I remember when we first saw cannabis go recreational in 2016, there were some people in the suits that I saw in the casinos like, yo, you too? And it was just like, ha ha. And they're hiding behind the curtain, like, oh shit, he knows. And so, I think there's still this opportunity to kind of showcase what makes cannabis so cool that's outside of the stereotypes that we still see. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard jokes about half baked and Cheech and Chong and this, that, and the third. The fact that that's still like part of the vernacular just breaks my heart, because there's so much more to it, and there's so
right.
many amazing people in the space that I'm learning about. And one more kind of aside here, I've been in the esports space for a very long time, since 2005. Right, and esports now is a thing that people talk about a lot more commonplace. I look at this cannabis world the same way. It's like a VC world in that there's all these really smart people all trying to figure out how do we make this work. And you have really
Right.
passionate people who've been in this for a very long time who really know what the fuck they're talking about.
Mm.
And we really want to utilize these social use lounges for places for those kinds of people to come and start speaking. Those kinds of people have a platform, not only just to educate the guests, but like I said, I want to be educated as well and really start to learn what this community has to offer, where what I can offer in return is a super dope venue to just be who you are.
That's so awesome, man. I love it. Yeah. I mean, and the fact that you said this is a smart group of people that are just trying to figure it out, like trying to solve, because like in any industry, you're in any and as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, you're solving problems on the daily. But cannabis is so heightened in that regard because you got the federal regulation, you got the state regulation, you've got all these fucking hoops to jump through. Not to mention they're changing every day, right? Like new things just happen. So it's just this game of cat and mouse kind of deal. But I said it before, it's just the industry promotes the highest level of human ingenuity, in my opinion. Like, because we
I
have
mean,
to figure it out, like you said.
banking is a problem. It's,
Yeah.
we have lots of problems, but at the core of this industry is just a lot of people who enjoy this plant, right? What I like to call my favorite social lubricant, right? I
Mm-hmm.
used to drink a lot when I owned a bar because that's what was around me. But we were in the back alley smoking a joint or a blunt because that's where we could do it. And, when we legalized cannabis, the only place to smoke was in a parking lot. And even because that was a thing, it still didn't give cannabis the necessary, stage
Right. Or
to show.
the inviting
Right.
welcome. Yeah.
And so we're still stuck in this mindset of like, I had to hide when I do this. Like, no, we don't. Like, now is the time to really put this out front and center, get the people who have really pushed this industry into the direction that we are right now, and start to get these regulators and federal, agencies to say, oh man, we really overshot, this whole thing. Like, this is something that we can really, put out there for people to enjoy. And, Las Vegas is a great opportunity for that, thing to happen because of the tourism that we get here. It's a
Right.
lot of people who come and go. And I remember the first time I went to Amsterdam, right? I was that American tourist.
Same.
Oof, I made an ass of
Same.
myself out there. Well, now we're going to have a lot of people coming to Vegas, and we are going to create the perfect venue to, really get this plant front and center and show what we can do with it.
That's dope. I love that. And just, I mean, it's a little sidebar. I mean, I
Please.
went to Amsterdam too, a solo trip, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so wild there. But one thing I remember, I was just walking on the road, and I literally saw it on the floor, just there was a gram of cannabis, like a nice flower bud. Like it's so common there. Someone just dropped it out of their pocket. It's like, oops. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I say it's Disneyland for adults. So
And that's what Vegas has always been. We've always known
right,
how to
right.
regulate sin. And it's the reason why, we're happy with the final product of the Cannabis Social Use Lounge regulations, because, we were regulating gambling before everyone in every state right now has a sports book on their phone. We knew what we were doing. So with cannabis, we've clearly made the right steps to ensure that, and I'll tell you from experience, I've opened up bars and restaurants in other states. The health department, the way they work out here versus other states, it's insane because
Yeah,
it's just a high level of sophistication that we are expected to provide. And that's what we're going to do with the lounges.
right. That's awesome, man. I can't wait to check them out. So, what is the cannabis tourism scene in Vegas more broadly? Like, and even maybe throughout the United States, it's still pretty infant at this point, right?
I mean, everything we have to look at is that this has been here forever because of the legacy market. But at the same time, yes, it's in its infancy because from a regulatory standpoint, we've only been legal since 2016 from a recreational standpoint. And what we keep seeing is the numbers look good, right? We're a $1 billion industry in the state of Nevada. That's a lot of money. I keep telling people that I do foresee in the next 3 to 4 years. And I heard something today. I'm going to speak in circles. Something along the lines of cannabis being like the sixth largest cash crop in the United States or North America. Right? It's kind of a big thing. But I do think that within the next 3, 4, 5 years, cannabis will have the same, industry value as the entire wine industry. And when
Mhm.
you put things together like that, you start looking at how we can utilize cannabis as this, social, enjoyable product, like we look at, you know, the bars, beer, alcohol.
It should. I mean, at this point, it should. And I think what the public is really starting to understand is, or at least scratch their head at, is like why this plant is listed as a Schedule 1 narcotic. Like that makes zero sense. If you look at the definition, it doesn't fit any of those categories at all. And so that's the one thing. And the other thing I think is really important that people do need to understand as our federally elected officials, like as they continue to talk about reform, is the descheduling versus rescheduling. Because rescheduling to two is
Right.
still under FDA
Right. That gets purchased by the
ruling.
pharmaceuticals. And if it's scheduled
Yep.
something else, then it's going to get purchased by the bars, I'm sorry, by the food and beverage, liquor licenses, what have you. I mean, yeah, regardless of what it's classified as. And I see your point, and I'm kind of cutting you off to kind of make mine, is that we have to educate these people as just how this product can affect them before we get into the regulatory nightmare that it is. Because the one thing that I keep pushing as an operator of a social use lounge, in the very near future, if I drink Jack Daniels, I'm an asshole. If I drink Hennessy, I'm a happy dude. This is going to happen with cannabis, where we just don't know what terpene profile and what delivery method is going to make one person react one way versus another. And that's why I'm excited about this, because we really want to learn just as much as everyone else, but then also showcase to new users that this isn't something that you have to be afraid of. There's more to it than, again, whatever you think, but we also have to be aware that we don't know what we don't know. And so it's just a fun playground where classifications and rescheduling and all that other stuff, that's cool. Like, I get that from a legal perspective. I still think we have so much to learn from education and science that, this is a petri dish of sorts, these venues. As long as we really keep a strong lid on how we handle customer service, and we really provide, again, I'm going to say safety a lot, because I mean it. There's a
Yeah.
place where, and I tell this story. The first time I went to Amsterdam, I ordered the White Widow off Jump. Bang! I want the White Widow, and this is in like the late '90s. I was smoking crap weed back then. I was in New York, so I didn't know what pineapple kush was or any of this. That didn't even make any sense back then. You just got whatever swag came your way.
Right.
Suddenly, I'm smoking White Widow, and I'm on planet Mars. Had a great time. But when I look at Las Vegas, what happens a lot of times is people come out here and immediately go to the moon because they just want to, let's get turned up, let's get lit, all the terms they want to use. I want to ensure that we look at cannabis almost like how we look at wine, where there's something for everyone, and that you take things in moderation and you slowly enjoy, learn, taste, really give people an understanding of what this product can offer before it becomes just this party, social, just shit show, which I don't want to operate, because that's going to get scary.
Right.
So, long roundabout way of saying I don't know where we started anymore, but it's just that there's a lot to learn. And I think the most important thing is that we start seeing that there's more good than anything. And, people pass out at nightclubs and bars all the time. That's not going to change. So
Right.
with cannabis, it's just a matter of, making sure that's not happening, because we have to really understand the difference between, like I said earlier, the Jack Daniels versus the Hennessy for certain people and certain strains.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you in the fact that like this whole obsession with high potency THC and getting fucked up and all that, like, no, the plant is intended. You should use it with intention, right? Like, why are you getting high? What are you reflecting on once you are, in that state after consuming? That's all important. So I'm definitely with you on that. And I think that that'll die down as more canna curious people come in, and, operators like yourself are educating those people with venues that Reset Las Vegas is providing. The one thing that I do kind of like disagree with you with is I don't think we have the luxury. Like, of course, product education and how strains affect someone is important. And I even think taking it beyond that, outside of the like comparison of wine discussion, it's like health benefits wise. Like, what does this strain do for you? Does it help with inflammation? Is it because it's really different than alcohol in that way? Alcohol is literally poison for your body. Your body rejects alcohol. Whereas cannabis has those we have our
Cannabinoid
receptors that
system.
bind with the cannabinoids and all that. So there's that. But like, this is moving so fast, and there's been this battle of 100 years of prohibition that we're in this place now where, oh my gosh, it's getting some national recognition. Like, people are talking about it at the national stage, especially the president of the United States.
Yeah.
So it's critical at this point, and everybody turn on. And we, I know it's like hard to ask, but we can't let that slip through the cracks, because it's going to be another 50 years or another, whatever it is, if it's rescheduled, if it's like, this is our chance. And, people like Steve D'Angelo is kicking ass because he's out in front of the White
Last
House,
Prisoner
and
Project, man. Shout out to that guy.
I mean, he's the shit, dude. And I love what he's doing. And there's, I want to have the organization that partnered with him. The poor girl got arrested during the demonstration. But anyway, I'm rambling on. But I
No,
mean,
please.
you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's just moving so fast that, I don't know. I think that we got to kick it into high gear and really push out the education in all facets,
No,
and,
and that's
yeah,
why I want to utilize the space as a platform. This is more than just a place to party and, have this
right.
experience. I really want to kind of create a home base for the community at large, so that, number one, I think it's just going to help get these messages across, because people are going to see, hey, look, in real life, there's these venues that people really still don't know what they are, right? We're all kind of hush hush as to what these concepts are going to be, because, there's still a lot of thought that has to be put into this,
Right.
because we don't know what these things are going to, truly be on a day-to-day basis.
You're totally right. I mean, in that aspect, and we're even seeing it with young kids. Obviously, their brains are still developing, and there's kind of issues with schizophrenia. In fact, my mom knows someone who, like, her son was affected by that. He was vaping and stuff. So it happens for sure. I know two people that had cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome,
Yep,
where you
yep,
just
absolutely. You're always, yep, that's
throwing
the
up,
number.
and yeah. And so that shit's real, and it's an external substance, right? So it can be abused like anything else. And that's why I go back to that word intention, and just, being thoughtful with everything you do, right? Whether it's alcohol or what have you. But let's get back to the actual lounges themselves, Chris. So tell me, what do consumption lounges, like, what will they look like? How will they operate? And more specifically, what will Reset Las Vegas's consumption lounges look like and operate?
So, again, it's hard for me to say what they will look like, because everyone's going to do their own version of said thing. And when I look at, West Hollywood and what they've done with the woods and artistry, prior to that, Lowell anyway, and, everyone kind of had their own version of a place to hang out and chill. Barbary Coast, another one, right? Just a place to kind of hang out and chill. And the hang out and chill thing is great. Um, I do think, though, because we're Vegas, we have to kind of go above and beyond, because we're really good at the whole food and beverage and entertainment, nightlife kind of thing. So the number one thing from my perspective is, believe it or not, air quality, right? I'm thinking about how, when we were going through these regulatory phases, when you go to a casino, there's a lot of people smoking cigarettes in there, but you don't necessarily come out smelling like a cigarette, thankfully. And it's because they're moving air a lot. So, we're really focused on air movement and air quality to ensure that our guests, don't feel like they're walking into a cumulus cloud of, cannabis smoke.
Right.
Something to be said about the outdoor opportunity. I do think that, to the idea of a Amsterdam coffee shop, but just sitting outside and enjoying, believe it or not, the weather in Vegas is very nice, as long as it's not in the summertime. So we have a solid 9 months of an opportunity for just open air entertainment by way of just smoking outside and eating, drinking, what have you. One of the things that really makes Nevada's regulatory very attractive our rules, is that cannabis infused dining is a major component here. And I do
Wow.
think that with the technology and the many brands as of late touching the beverage side of things, I do think it's a massive opportunity for cannabis industry as a whole to introduce its product line to guests, because everywhere you go in Las Vegas, someone's holding a cup. And so if we, not even if, but when we start putting together, like these mixology kind of opportunities with cannabis infused drinks, when we can take local Las Vegas chefs and celebrity chefs and integrate, cannabis dining responsibly, with an understanding of what a guest's, capacity for ingestion really is, what my girlfriend can bang out 30 milligrams, no problem. I'm just sipping on five.
Right.
But there's something to be said about the food and beverage experience at these lounges. I think are really what's going to set it apart, because you can create a place where you can smoke weed and do something else. I made the point about whether it's a movie theater, a comedy show, a music platform, or like bowling, just anything. If you add a joint to it, makes it kind of a better time, right? If you went to a concert and if you didn't see or smell any weed, it wasn't a good concert, that kind of thing. So in Vegas, these things can be anything that you would expect to have in a social environment, and we just add the cannabis to it. So a long-winded way of saying anything that you enjoy doing in Vegas, just add some element of cannabis to it. That's kind of what we're trying to strive for.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I mean, the whole fine dining cannabis course experience is just, fascinates me. In fact, we had close friends recently that had that whole experience, and they just said it was amazing. So it makes sense naturally for Vegas to do that, because there's so many high quality, world renowned chefs there, right? I mean, that could easily pivot and figure out how to come
That are
up
doing
with.
it now anyway. Like, I'm
They're
sorry to
doing it now.
interrupt you, but like I've
Yeah.
the people who've reached out to me, these are chefs, men, women, who have all been doing this for years, whether it's a private party, whether it's a side hustle, like it's out there. So now it's like,
Wow.
okay, great. Here's the place to do it legally. Let's work together.
Right, right. Totally. And then you talked about regulations. I'm curious to hear about like the whole regulatory process of trying to, and then eventually, getting to the point where you're opening up the doors of a consumption lounge in Las Vegas, Nevada. What is that like?
Long, arduous, and exhausting. 2016, we get the AOK. Was it 2017? I mix my years up now. But what it comes down to is in 2017, the city of Las Vegas, for a little bit of history, did approve for the opportunity to open up at that time, we call them consumption lounges. Terrible name, but consumption lounges. The state said no, not just yet, because they want to have a regulatory body that can monitor this industry as it's growing, which was a really good idea. The same way we have a gaming control board to follow what our casino industry does, which is our number one industry by far. Now they want to make a version of that for cannabis. So that was going to take time. And, as that's happening, it actually was kind of good for us, because it gave us an opportunity to work very closely with, our council people from the county, our local city representatives, mayors, right? It's just people, senators. I mean, it's just every level of our government really wanted to learn. And I think that's why we were
Awesome.
cool with how long this took, because it wasn't all right, like we are
Like,
hearing
get back to
people.
me, or I can't even get a
Yeah,
hold of you. Like,
no,
that's
this
great.
was, I want to learn. I will take a trip out and let's go explore this place, that place. Let's talk to what's happening in Colorado. Let's talk to what's happening in California. And it was really enjoyable to see, whether it was a government affairs group or whether it was the people who really just signed the paperwork on a law. It was, I need to understand more, and we got to kind of like teach as much as we ourselves got to learn. And that's why I brought up the air quality thing. Like, that was something that was a real sticking point, because we could sit here and talk about how much fun you as a guest may have, but we have to take into account, what about people who work there? There's someone in there for 8 hours, if we're not taking care of our air quality for someone working there for 8 hours, we're kind of not doing it's a great disservice to the people who are working in the industry. So, it was that level of commitment to all facets of operations that our, Steve Yeager, Tick Sager Bloom, you know, everyone, including Governor Sisolak, all got their hands in this to learn. And that's a good thing.
It's a great thing. I mean, you don't hear that often, especially for the majority of operators that I talk to out of California specifically. I mean, it's like it's a nightmare. They talk about. So that's really great to hear, and the fact that they're willing to learn and talk to other states that are online, right, and kind of learn and cherry pick from that is just great to hear. I want to ask you, how do you see these experiences, these immersive cannabis experiences impacting the future? I mean, we talked about, how the social setting and like people getting educated, but let's fast forward, I mean, to a point where cannabis is normalized. Like how do you see it impacting society?
So the thing I'm most excited about is, showing people in places like universities, right? Like, hey, look, we're doing this thing in a place that is, it's going to be misconstrued as some wild college party, what have you. But the reality is, what we're seeing is there's a demand for this product, and we need to learn more. And we have to have an opportunity to understand this plant better. And I think that, even looking at a school like UNLV, right, the hospitality side of things, I mean, cannabis hospitality becomes a course that people are going to take because this is going to become that large of an industry. The science behind it, the health and wellness side of things, the research that can be, utilized by, let's say, something like the Larry Ruvo Center, which is part of the Cleveland Clinic, right? This is like major medical research that can suddenly be saying, hey, these guys have a place where there's, hundreds of thousands of people coming in and out smoking weed and everything seems to be going okay. Maybe we have it wrong, and let's start learning some more. So I think that these venues create normalization in such a way that while, your earlier point about we need to reschedule so that we can get more things done, I do think that when we show that this is a venue where people are having a good time safely, and the stories that some of us are telling are probably, it's necessary to learn a little bit more, and we start seeing more in the form of research. I think that's probably my biggest goal, is to see just more research on this plant done so that it can be more than just the party substance that we're currently looking at it from a social use lounge perspective.
Right. And that's been the biggest thing. I mean, a lot of the doctors and scientists that I have on, they kind of somewhat correct me because I'm like, yeah, I mean, the data isn't there. And then they're not saying it's there yet, like to your point. Like there's still, but they say there's so much more data than we've had in the past because it was also one-sided kind of previously with propaganda and the prohibition and that just like machine that was pumping out, all the negative, all the kind of even the lies. So
Sure.
we're getting there, and it's a good thing. It's a great thing to see that there's progress in that, but there's still a lot of work to be done. To your point,
I mean, look, I
yeah,
think
go
it's
ahead.
great also that we can, again, when you have a cannabis social use lounge, if you look at a dispensary, it's a retail store, right? I mean, that's just what it is. You're going there to buy your cannabis. To have a place where you're actually going to hang out for probably 90 minutes to, 2 hours, perhaps, it gives you an opportunity to really learn more. And especially when it's around other people. We mentioned the social side of this earlier. You're going to have, again, more of a kind of a cosign as to this lifestyle that you're suddenly playing in.
Mhm.
And when I look at, the education and research side of things, you said it's kind of, there's a lot of data. I'll push back and say there's hardly any data because of how many people that I've spoke to as well, where it's like, we really want to do this, but our bosses say no. And I think when we get rid of that stigma, there's going to be less bosses saying no, and they'll be more willing to kind of jump in the pool and start dedicating time to this because, yeah, before a reschedule happens, I just want to see more of a community groundswell where other industries say, hey, I want in on this also. And now the plant is a lot more than what it's being misconstrued as.
Yeah, I mean the data is that it's been used for 2,000 years,
Yeah.
right? No one has ever overdosed from the plant. we know and we discussed there's a small percentage of people that have ailments and that they are adverse to its effects with, especially with overuse, vaping and other things. So I get, and we in 1996 we've discovered that we have an endocannabinoid system
Right.
that biologically marries to the cannabinoids. So I mean, that's a good start, I think. I know that, in terms of getting more data and actually understanding strains and whatnot, I mean, really the research is the hands are tied because of the
Yeah.
federal
Yeah.
illegality. So
Yeah.
the government needs to step out of the way, basically. I know we all can agree on that because we've discussed banking issues and other things previously. So it's just unfortunate. This plant has been held captive for so long, and but we'll get there. But as we close and as we wrap up, Chris, I want to ask you, I know what's on your mind. I mean, I understand there's a new Thrive location that's opening and right on the strip. I mean, come on,
We
prime
are,
location.
yeah, look, and we started this conversation with, oh, video games and weed, like that's the thing to do. And yeah, I was excited about that 2 years ago, but thankfully we were introduced to the team at Thrive, and these guys just get it, right? Like their team, loves the plan. This team has taught me so much already. But more importantly, they have this amazing hyper localization like thought process that I really get behind. So right now, our latest location that's opening up is on Sammy Davis Jr. Boulevard. And so we like to call it our Sammy Davis location. It's very close to the Sapphire Strip Club, also a great place in Las Vegas, if that's your thing. And, the reality is the location is prime, but the team is just fucking awesome because these guys stuck to their guns, focused on Nevada first. And so they've built their local market. And what we want to do now, after all these years now, is kind of take our local market and bring it to the tourist area, because the reality is a Las Vegas person like myself doesn't go to the strip very much. While people think we live in casinos, we barely go to them.
Right.
But the opportunity with Thrive that's exciting is that because of the location and because of just the proximity to things like, where the Raiders now play football, where we have a hockey team that Las Vegas wasn't a sports town. Now suddenly we are. And I'm really excited about watching, a Super Bowl smoking a joint in public, because that's never been done before, except for when we do it at our house.
Right.
The venue that we're looking at, what we want to do with Thrive, is going to be fun because it's going to be sophisticated. I wanted to do video games and weed, no question about it. I think I said it like 30 times. But what I really want to do is work with these guys to create this something that's going to get more of the kind of curious out of the closet, where they're going to come in and they're going to feel like, hey, this isn't just like a cannabis lounge. Like, this is like a thing, like a high-end like supper club or restaurant or entertainment space. It doesn't matter what you want to call it, because we don't know what we're going to call it. But what we know is we're going to offer high-end service as well. And so the one thing that Thrive does really good is their bartenders are extremely intelligent and educated, do a lot of work to really understand what's going on. And when you start tying in the history of cannabis in your messaging while you're selling, the product, it's even better, because now, you brought up several times about the history of it and kind of, just all the bullshit that we had to go through. Well, that should be part of the story when you're selling the cannabis as well, because we have to really take those walls down. And what better way to do it than like just a venue that is just open and comfortable and inclusive. So the location is kick-ass. Thrive's been doing an amazing job. They have 8 locations now. Well, this will be the 8th location. And, as I see it, when I originally wanted to do this with video games, I was like, it might be still a little too kiddie for, normal audiences. And while you and I may think gaming is cool, I don't want to ignore the fact that there's a 40-year plus audience that comes to Vegas all the time. Let's make something that's kind of sexy for them, and let's tap into what Vegas is. So when I think of Vegas, I think of like the old Copa, which was at the Venetian, where, the Rat Pack was. So why not have a place where I can see local musicians and talent put on a show while I'm smoking a joint or eating some kind of infused meal or drinking a cannabis beverage? So whether it's various activations that we do here, we just want to be able to provide something for everyone. And I do know, we'll do a comedy show. You come in, smoke some weed, have something to eat, and then a comedian's going to pop in. It's those kind of things I think is going to be a lot of fun, because we have the ability to do all that, because Thrive's got the balls to do it. And, we could have started small. We could have done something that's just like, let's just take it safe, which, rightfully some people want to do. But we're going to be bold, and we're just going to come out swinging. It's just like, hey, look, when you think Las Vegas is entertainment, that's what we're going to do, and it's just going to have cannabis in there, and it's going to make it a completely different experience.
Man, if I have there's three words, I got inclusive, bold, and versatile. That's what I'm hearing with that, because I mean, all those events and activations sound amazing. I mean, a stand-up comedian, watch the Super Bowl. I mean, listen to some really cool, like older kind of style music in like a Rat Pack setting. I mean, that's awesome.
It's
So
going to be so dope.
yeah, I mean, you got so much exciting stuff going on, Chris, and I'm just really happy to have talked to you today and get the word out on all these exciting projects and activations that you have coming up. So where can people find y'all's website or social media so they can learn more about these openings and when they're gonna launch?
So look, social media is tricky, isn't it? But
Oh
look
man.
for Thrive Cannabis Marketplace and look for Chris of Coins. Christopher LaPorte on the LinkedIn. Always happy to connect and really just talk shop. Thrive Cannabis Marketplace. They're pretty much wherever they need to be online on all social media platforms. And yeah, I'm an open book, and I'm really honored to be a part of this community. And I'm glad they opened their arms to let me in, because I know what it's like when the kind of an outsider comes in. And I did feel like one in the beginning, because I wasn't the one, who I wasn't really fighting the fight in the forefront, right? I was just a nightlife operator who really liked to blunt with his NBA 2K. So here I am now.
Hey, and that's okay, because that's what's beautiful about this plant is, like you said earlier, everybody does it, but no one knows about it. And so we're all kind of coming out of that can of closet, and this industry is for everyone. That idea of this is ours, this is ours. Well, good luck with that mindset, because it's inevitable. So you either play nice or you don't, and you have a rough go. That's really kind of what it comes down to. And you can weed out the good operator, the good people from the bad. I mean, that's gonna naturally happen.
Oh yeah.
So,
Am I going to see
Chris,
MJ BizCon?
man, unfortunately not. So I've got weddings this month, and we just moved, and my wife is pregnant. There's just too much going on, man.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, we're super excited. A lot, but I plan to go next year. I promise. I'm gonna get out there. It's just timing wasn't good.
Well,
So
we'll have these lounges open aggressively first quarter next year, a little more realistic, probably early second quarter. So you got time. But
okay.
anyone going out to MJ BizCon, I'll be there. If it comes out on time, cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's gonna come out week of November like 7th.
That's when you heard it here, folks. November 7th. No editing needed.
There's no editing. This is raw, my man. This is fun. I appreciate your time. This was really cool. We got to have you back on as things develop, for sure.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. Thank you for everything today, sir.
Of course, of course. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Peace out.